securing Jamaica's trade and development interests while advancing the government's inclusive and proactive foreign policy. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade's Year in Review 2015. Early in 2015, the ministry hosted its 17th annual Diplomatic Week as it continued building partnerships for prosperity. During the year, diplomatic relations was established with the Republic of Equatorial Guinea and the Federal Democratic Republic of Nepal. In January, Minister Arnold J. Nicholson met with counterpart ministers from the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, and China. Discussions resulted in bilateral agreements in several areas. That same month, Jamaica tabled 3 of 24 declarations that were adopted by the 3rd Summit of the Heads of Government and State of the CELAC Group, aimed at reducing poverty and creating equitable and sustainable development. That period also witnessed Jamaica and China signing an agreement for economic and technical cooperation valued at over $1.8 billion. In March, Jamaica and Belgium agreed to strengthen bilateral relations and identified areas for cooperation, including sustainable development, renewable energy, and security. The next month, bilateral talks were held with U.S. President Barack Obama, who also signed a statement of intent for the deployment of energy-related technologies to Jamaica during a visit to the island. At the 7th Summit of the Americas, meanwhile, Jamaica made its call for legally binding commitments from parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
This is a matter of survival for small island developing states.
In May, the governments of Jamaica and Brazil signed a visa waiver agreement for people to move freely and to boost tourism between both countries. And a MOU was signed with China for the commencement of negotiations to establish an air services agreement between our two countries. The Foreign Affairs Ministry continued to pull the power of the diaspora to bear on development in 2015 with the 6th staging of the biennial Jamaica Diaspora Conference in June. The conference attracted over 2,000 participants, engaging business persons in meetings on investment, trade, and local linkages. In June, the European Union committed €800 million towards investment support for Latin American and Caribbean nations, and later €346 million was committed to support regional integration and address development challenges. Diplomatic ties with the United Kingdom were strengthened in September with a visit from British Prime Minister David Cameron, who announced £360 million in development assistance to the Caribbean, including Jamaica. Not long after that visit, Jamaica welcomed Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to the island. Jamaica and Japan signed off on areas for future cooperation, including the use of renewable energy solutions, and signed a cultural grant.
We agreed on both sides that there is ample space for the expansion and enhancement of our cooperation at all levels.
Jamaica also celebrated 50 years of diplomatic relations with Venezuela and hosted the summit to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the Petro-Caribe Agreement. On September 25, 2015, world leaders at the UN General Assembly, including Jamaica, adopted the new UN 2030 agenda, which seeks to complete a number of human development initiatives across the globe.
Jamaica stands fully behind the 2030 agenda, Mr. President, and we believe that it is a worthy successor to the Millennium Development Goals.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade's engagements at the multilateral level resulted in approvals granted for new WTO MFN waivers under the Caribbean Basin Initiative in May and CaribCan in July. The waiver provided extension to duty-free exports of eligible products to markets in the USA and Canada. At a meeting of trade ministers in Brussels in October, Jamaica repeated its call for a more accommodating and flexible multilateral trade system. In December, members of the World Trade Organization delivered on those expectations at the 10th WTO Ministerial Conference in Nairobi, Kenya, with historic agreements to address export subsidy, export competition, and preferential treatment. Beyond the U.S. President and the Prime Ministers of Britain and Japan, the Foreign Affairs Ministry facilitated other high-level visits in 2015. They included the Vice Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress of China, Colombia's Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, and South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade in 2015, strengthening foreign relations and trade, maximizing Jamaica's growth and development objectives.